The story opens in the shattered remains of a ruined city, where a mysterious woman comes across a young boy named Lloyd. He stands perfectly still, staring off at something no one else can see. But the woman instantly feels certain about one thing. If this child stands beside her, she might finally gain the power needed to defeat the demon lord once and for all. Pushing aside her hesitation, she gently pulls Lloyd into an embrace. He doesn't resist, still lost deep in his own thoughts, like someone buffering in real life. Not long after, she brings him home and wastes no time showing him what she can do. Flames appear in her hands as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Lloyd's eyes go wide, the kind of expression that says, "Wait, people can just do that." For him, this is completely beyond imagination, but instead of giving him a warm welcome, she immediately orders him to copy her, adding that if he can't, he'll be going to bed without dinner. It's basically the magical equivalent of no snacks until you get it right. With zero knowledge, no experience, and absolutely no idea what he's doing, Lloyd forces himself to try. By the end of the night, he manages to produce the tiniest flame. For most kids, that would be a huge win. For her, barely acceptable. To make her point, she casually surrounds him in fire and tells him he still has a long way to go. Tough love. The next morning, she moves on to water magic. She shows him how to strike the ground in a specific way to activate it. Lloyd actually pulls it off on his first try, but all he manages to do is soak the dirt beneath his feet. Not exactly impressive. Disappointed, she dunks him into a pool as punishment, like a parent throwing a kid into the deep end to teach them to swim. Training continues with wind magic, then ice magic, and over the next few months, Lloyd improves at a shocking pace. Wanting to finally earn her approval, he creates a perfect ice sculpture of her. He clearly thinks this has to be the one. No way she can hate this, but she stays unimpressed. To show him just how far behind he is, she animates the statue he made. It suddenly grabs Lloyd, and then she makes it grow bigger and bigger before shattering it into pieces right in front of him. Message received. Instead of discouraging him, though, it just fuels his determination even more. One evening, she drinks way too much and wakes up feeling absolutely terrible. Lloyd steps in and heals her instantly, revealing that he's also picked up healing magic just by watching and learning from her. For a brief moment, she softens and hugs him, genuinely grateful. Then, she snaps right back into strict mode and tells him he's still nowhere near her level. Months later, she's seen holding a strange grimoire, clearly troubled by something. When Lloyd suddenly walks in, she jumps in surprise and drops it. He picks it up to hand it back, but the moment he touches it, something inside him reacts. He collapses on the spot. Seeing this, she realizes he might actually be one of the chosen. The way she reacts suggests she might have once been in that position too. She's worried he'll repeat the same mistakes she did, becoming overconfident and reckless. While he sleeps, she gently kisses his forehead and casts a subtle spell, most likely something meant to limit his power. The next day, she introduces him to the idea of becoming a white mage, a magic user who focuses on healing and helping others. To practice, she has him use his magic on an apple tree to make a single apple grow bigger. Lloyd succeeds. Naturally, she follows it up by covering the entire tree in apples with almost no effort, reminding him once again how far behind he is. She really said, "Good job, now watch this." Later that night, Lloyd notices a mention of ancient magic while studying. Curious, he asks about it, but she shuts the topic down immediately, telling him not to worry about spells that disappeared centuries ago. Instead, she teaches him advanced techniques like space magic, letting him summon and dismiss objects freely. Eventually, she decides it's time for a real test. She blindfolds him and takes him deep into a monster-filled forest. The only thing she gives him is a tiny kitchen knife. She tells him to survive using only his magic and find his way home within a week. Then she vanishes, just like that, leaving him alone. No map, no directions, just vibes and danger. Almost immediately, a wolf-like monster appears and chases him through the woods. He barely escapes by climbing a tall tree, panicking and trying to figure out his next move. After calming himself down, he uses a detection spell and senses his master's home far to the north. With no other choice, he starts walking. At night, he uses healing magic to ripen wild fruit so he has something to eat. He finds a small cave, carefully draws a magic circle, and starts experimenting. He modifies his spells to boost his physical strength and other abilities whenever they're active. Basically, he's out here inventing stat buffs like he just discovered a new game mechanic. The next morning, he accidentally wanders into a queen spider's territory. The giant spider lunges at him, and Lloyd immediately decides, yeah, no thanks, and runs. He activates one of his modified spells, boosting his speed tenfold, and sprints all the way back home in a desperate dash. He collapses at the door from exhaustion. She opens the door calmly, smiling like she expected him the whole time, and welcomes him back. As time passes, Lloyd grows taller and more confident. One day, while cleaning her study, he finds a book about cities. He's instantly fascinated since he's never seen life outside their home. Meanwhile, she's busy running experiments and makes him her assistant, barely giving him a chance to rest for weeks. One morning, she heads to the rooftop, planning to train him until he can't stand anymore, only to realize he's gone. She notices the city book lying open and immediately understands what happened. Meanwhile, Lloyd has arrived in town for the first time. He walks through the crowded streets, amazed at everything around him, like someone who just stepped into the real world for the first time. It's pure sensory overload. He buys a loaf of bread and immediately runs out of money. Reality check hits fast. Right then, an adventurer recruitment poster blows straight into his face like the universe is pushing him toward the next step. So he signs up. What he doesn't know is that a mysterious man is quietly watching him from a distance, clearly interested in what he'll do next. Soon, Lloyd joins an adventurer party and heads with them to the top of a castle to fight a giant cyclops. The party leader, Alan, calls for healing support, but before anything happens, Lloyd secretly casts a stat-boosting spell that makes everyone stronger. He doesn't say a word about it. Suddenly, the archer lands a perfect shot in the cyclops' eye. The knight blocks attacks like it's nothing. Alan steps forward and finishes the monster in one clean strike, fully convinced it was all his own skill. One party member starts suspecting Lloyd might be behind the sudden power boost, but nothing is said out loud. When they return to town, Alan is treated like a legend since no one had ever defeated that cyclops before. The reward is huge. But when he pays Lloyd, he gives him just 5 coins, saying that's fair since he's only a beginner. Lloyd quietly accepts it without complaining. When Alan suggests celebrating with drinks, Lloyd politely declines, saying he doesn't drink. The party's mage gets oddly offended by this, like he just rejected a group chat invite. Alan shrugs it off, saying they can just find another white mage anyway, since Lloyd didn't do much. Lloyd hears the comment, but simply walks away, closing the door behind him. Back at Merlin's house, the mysterious man who had been watching Lloyd arrives. His name is Willie. Merlin asks if Lloyd made it safely. Willie confirms that Lloyd joined an adventurer party, and Merlin lets out a relieved breath. She believes it's time for him to experience the outside world, as long as he doesn't get overconfident like she once did. Her expression darkens as she remembers the past. Years ago, the Demon Lord suddenly blew himself up to take control of a magical artifact. The explosion wiped out an entire village, killing everyone, including Merlin. One of her party members, Sybil, sacrificed himself using forbidden ancient magic to revive everyone who died. Ever since then, she's carried deep guilt over his death. Back in town, Lloyd continues helping Alan's party by quietly boosting them in every battle. They keep winning, completely unaware he's the reason. Later, Rena studies defense strategies, trying to figure out why monster attacks suddenly feel easier to handle. Alan says he's noticed he feels stronger too, but assumes it's just his own talent. Rena points out he hasn't trained in a while, so that makes 0 sense. At the same time, out in the forest, guards on patrol are attacked by a massive golem. One of them realizes he might actually die over a low-paying job. The next day, the captain asks Alan for help. Alan agrees immediately, thinking it'll be easy. With Lloyd's tracking magic, they find the golem's cave behind a waterfall. Thanks to Lloyd secretly boosting everyone again, defeating it is simple. But Lloyd notices a hidden demon creating another golem from the cave ceiling, using a staff powered by a magic stone. Knowing how dangerous that is, Lloyd quickly steps in. He buffs the archer's accuracy and tells her to shoot at the demon. She hesitates since the target is partially hidden, but trusts him and fires. It lands perfectly. Then Lloyd tells the mage to teleport the staff into his hands. Once he has it, he seals its power instantly. Alan gets angry that Lloyd is suddenly giving orders. To prove himself, he charges recklessly at the golem. Lloyd rushes forward and shoves him out of the way just before the creature can crush him. Instead of thanking him, Alan gets mad for interfering. After the fight, Alan kicks Lloyd out of the party, claiming he's useless and lazy. Years of Merlin telling him he's not good enough make Lloyd believe it, so he accepts it and leaves without arguing. For the next few days, he searches for another group, but most parties are full and white mages aren't in high demand. Just when he starts losing hope, a girl named Yui urgently needs a white mage. The guild receptionist immediately points her toward Lloyd. The moment she hears he's available, she grabs his hand and pulls him out of the guild in a hurry, not even giving him time to process what's happening. A short while earlier, Lloyd was wandering through the city, still feeling down after being kicked out of Alan's party. Alan's harsh words kept looping in his head like a bad TikTok sound you can't skip, telling him he's a worthless white mage who only hides behind teammates, with healing as his sole talent, and that even Sheena could do it better. When Lloyd quietly asks if that's really how Alan sees him, Alan dismisses him coldly, telling him to just get lost already. As Lloyd walks away, he overhears the girls, except Rena, loudly cheering, clearly relieved that the dead weight is finally gone. It hits like getting unfriended in real life, and then seeing the group chat rename itself Without You. Later, Lloyd ends up in the town center near a large fountain with a statue on top. Looking closely, he realizes it resembles his master perfectly, which somehow makes the loneliness hit even harder. It feels like the universe just looked at him and said, yeah, let's twist the knife a little more. Elsewhere, a squad of adventurers approaches a bandit hideout to begin their raid. It's an A-ranked mission, so they're moving carefully. One of them, named Clum, seems particularly unhappy about something and lacks enthusiasm, like someone forced to show up to a Monday meeting that could have been an email. Still, they launch their surprise attack swiftly, not giving the bandits a chance to fight back. The mage and her teammate, Silica, loudly begins chanting her spell, and one of the bandits cleverly instructs the others to wait until she's finished chanting before striking. The bandits rush forward right as Silica exhausts herself, believing they found an opening. However, Cross, the team's sharp-eyed archer, swiftly takes them all out with a single precise arrow. Their team is perfectly balanced. Even their swordsman and leader Yu holds her own easily. When Yu briefly loses her footing, the team's tank, Dagas, quickly jumps in to shield her like a human brick wall with anger issues. At the same time, Clum boosts Dagas' physical abilities with her magic, helping him effortlessly overwhelm the bandits. The bandit leader, realizing they're hopelessly outmatched, tries to sneak away, only to be cornered by Yu, who orders him to surrender quietly. Confused and desperate, but as he yells, he suddenly notices the shiny golden badge around her neck, marking her as an S-ranked adventurer. In fact, the entire party wears the same rank. That's the exact moment it hits him that he didn't just pick the wrong fight. He walked straight into the fantasy equivalent of poking a hornet's nest with a stick. The boss bandit has one final ace up his sleeve. He grips his staff tight, casting a summoning spell that causes a giant golem to burst out of the ground. Facing something like this, magic becomes useless, instantly leaving Clum and Silica unable to help. Cross, their skilled archer, quickly realizes even his arrows won't scratch the monster, leaving only Yu and Dagas able to stand against it. Yu, as their fearless leader, takes charge without hesitation, sprinting forward and slamming her sword against the golem with all her might. The impact echoes, but the monster shrugs it off effortlessly, barely even scratched. It's like hitting a tank with a pool noodle. Clum, the white mage, still distracted by something, doesn't even hear it when Yu desperately calls for her help. Finally, frustrated and worried, Yu shouts Clum's name loud enough to snap her back into reality. Clum flusters and quickly casts her strength enhancement spell, boosting Yu's power significantly. With renewed energy and at least 5 times her normal strength, Yu slices straight through the massive golem, ending the fight instantly. After finishing the job and capturing all the bandits, including their defeated boss, Yu gently approaches Clum, concerned about her earlier distraction. Clum softly apologizes, visibly upset, saying she no longer feels like she deserves to call herself an adventurer. Yu's eyes soften as she understands Clum's struggle. Realizing it's connected to her sister Sylvie, she kindly asks Clum how Sylvie has been doing lately. But before Clum can respond, the scene cuts back to Lloyd, who's currently still feeling hopeless on his 3rd day without finding a new party. At this point, even the pigeons in the square are starting to recognize him like, oh, it's that unemployed healer again. Just then, Lloyd overhears someone yelling loudly at the guild counter, desperately needing a white mage. Yu doesn't even pause to ask about his qualifications. She immediately grabs Lloyd's hand and practically drags him back to their team's base like someone who just found the last charger at an airport. There, she proudly introduces Lloyd to the confused group, enthusiastically welcoming him without even officially confirming if he wants to join. Her teammates aren't surprised. This impulsiveness is typical Yu. Cross apologetically explains to Lloyd that the reason for their desperate hurry is a critical quest they can't tackle without Clum. However, the whole team quietly doubts Lloyd can truly fill Clum's shoes, and Lloyd himself feels the intense pressure, especially now that he's learned he's standing among an elite S-ranked adventurer party. Even though Lloyd had already given up on himself, Yu wasn't about to let him go. She practically begged him to show off some of his magic, like a coach who just spotted a 6'5" kid and refuses to believe he doesn't play basketball. Lloyd figured he'd just embarrass himself again, but reluctantly agreed anyway. Without making a big deal out of it, he casually summoned his staff using storage magic. That alone made the entire team freeze. Storage magic wasn't common. It wasn't, I learned this from a book at the library magic. It was, oh, this guy has credentials magic. Effortlessly, and without chanting a single word, Lloyd layered multiple enhancement spells onto everyone. No dramatic speech, no glowing summoning circle, no theme music, just buffs. At first, nobody felt different. Yu shrugged and casually swung her sword. The blade sliced clean through a thick tree like it was cardboard from an Amazon box. Silence. Absolute silence. Seeing their stunned faces, Lloyd quickly explained, oh, I just stacked multiple physical enhancement spells. I figured a single one wouldn't impress high-level adventurers like you. It was painfully obvious now that Clum's magic didn't even exist in the same zip code as Lloyd's. But Lloyd? Lloyd still had zero clue how ridiculous he actually was. Nervously, he continued, I used 5 separate enhancement spells at once. I thought if I only used one simple spell, elite top-tier adventurers like you might find it kind of mid. Yu's eye twitched. Cross actually whispered, 5? Lloyd nodded. Yeah. So the team explained Clum's situation. Clum is actually a solid mage. She's been balancing adventuring with caring for her younger sister, Sylvie, who's terribly sick. For a long time, she managed both. But lately, exhaustion has been eating her alive. Last mission, she spaced out and nearly got everyone killed. Even though the team told her it wasn't her fault, Clum resigned anyway. She didn't want to be the weak link. Usually, they can handle quests without a white mage, but for ranked missions, absolutely not. Yu added quietly, Clum isn't just useful, she's our friend. Lloyd noticed. You Care about her that much? Yes, they answered without hesitation. Something in Lloyd's chest tightened. He couldn't help thinking how lucky Clum was to have teammates who actually cared. Lloyd asked about Sylvie's illness. They explained she's gradually turning into a magic stone. Lloyd froze. He remembered studying magic stone sickness with his master. His master had once casually mentioned that it was reversible, if handled correctly. Trying to stay calm, Lloyd asked, "Can we visit her right now?" Soon they stood at Clum's doorstep. She answered, surprised, but invited them in. They sat down, and Lloyd immediately asked about Sylvie. Clum explained that she and Sylvie used to adventure together. During one mission inside a cave, Sylvie got hurt. Clum wasn't there at the time and only found her after she'd already been injured. Lloyd asked for more details. Clum sighed. "It's easier if I show you." She led them to Sylvie's room. The moment the door opened, Lloyd felt overwhelming magical energy. It was thick, heavy, wrong. Clum gently pulled back the covers. Sylvie's limbs had already solidified into stone. "And eventually," Clum said quietly, "it'll spread to her whole body." Without hesitation, Lloyd said, "I can cure her." Clum looked at him like he just claimed he could fix the economy. "I've consulted top-level mages," she said. "They couldn't do a damn thing, and you're just a regular white mage." Lloyd calmly asked, "Did the injury happen inside a cave?" Clum's eyes widened. "Yes." Lloyd examined where the petrification began and nodded. "It's not just a curse. It's invasive magical energy from that cave. It's still spreading." Clum was still doubtful. "My master confirmed the method would work," Lloyd added quietly. "You stepped forward. Trust him." After a long pause, Clum nodded. Lloyd took a deep breath and pulled out his staffs. He cast a powerful spell. The air shifted. "I suppressed the excess magical energy first," he explained. "If I control the overflow, I can heal her safely." Then he activated a second healing spell. Clum stared. "That magic? That's not normal. Nothing special." You looked at Clum. "Well?" Clum couldn't deny it. He's casting 2 advanced spells simultaneously, and his control hasn't wavered at all. The stone on Sylvie's limbs was slowly fading. Color returned to her skin. Clum covered her mouth. Sylvie's fingers twitched. Overcome with emotion, Clum rushes to Sylvie's side and grips her hand as the stone slowly fades away. Clum thanks Lloyd over and over, her voice shaky with gratitude. Still, she admits she won't be rejoining the party. Once Sylvie fully recovers, the two of them plan to start adventuring together again as sisters. She promises that when things settle down, they'll all celebrate properly to thank everyone. With a warm smile, Clum tells Lloyd the team will be more than fine with him around. Lloyd immediately corrects her, awkwardly explaining that he hasn't actually joined the party yet. That alone leaves Clum staring at him in disbelief, surprised that someone capable of what he just did could still doubt himself that much. Later that evening, the group gathers for dinner. The mood is light, full of laughter and relief. Yu excitedly retells the story of how Lloyd stepped in and saved Sylvie, making it sound even more heroic than it already was. Despite all the praise, Lloyd just shrugs, brushing it off like it was nothing special. Yu finally leans forward and tells him to stop selling himself short, reminding him how incredible he was back there and how none of them could have done what he did. Even so, Lloyd quietly apologizes, saying he feels bad that he couldn't convince Clum to return to the party. The others quickly reassure him that it doesn't matter. Right now, what matters is that Sylvie is getting better and that they're all together. Tonight is about celebrating, not worrying. As the conversation shifts toward future plans and upcoming adventures, Lloyd finds himself thinking back to how cold and dismissive the hero's party used to be. The difference between that and the warmth he's feeling now hits him harder than he expected. For the first time in a long while, he feels like he actually belongs somewhere. Lloyd can officially join their party. And with mutual enthusiasm, Lloyd officially becomes part of the group. Following that, they host a celebration feast for Lloyd, urging him to stuff himself since Tantab is on them. Lloyd digs into the meal like he's been starving his whole life, amusing his new teammates quite a bit. They jokingly question if he's really that famished, and Lloyd explains that the dishes served in this city taste absolutely phenomenal. That surprises everyone again, because the local cuisine is notoriously mediocre. But Lloyd insists that compared to the stuff he's had to eat his whole childhood, these dishes feel incredibly flavorful. Intrigued, Yua now wants to know about Lloyd's upbringing. So Lloyd shares that he grew up with his mentor, who mostly cooked whatever grew in her backyard. She'd sometimes pick random wild fungi, and other times she'd just roast meat from creatures she hunted, handing it to him without adding any spices. Lloyd says that thanks to those meals, he taught himself how to cook, but even his best recipes never tasted as amazing as tonight's dinner. At this point, Yu completely loses interest in the food. She eagerly asks Lloyd to reveal more about his mentor, and the rest of the group jumps in, equally interested. Silica wonders if his mentor is also a white mage, and Lloyd says she's actually more of a battle-focused mage, since there'd often be random explosions whenever she practiced alone. Silica finds it incredible that someone who wasn't even a white mage managed to train Lloyd this perfectly, and he wholeheartedly agrees that Merlin's skills are unmatched. Silica enthusiastically says she'd gladly train under his mentor for a bit, but Lloyd cuts her off immediately, warning her that she'll absolutely regret those words if she ever finds out the reality. After chatting a bit more about Merlin, the party moves on to plan their next quest, and Yu asks Dagus to brief Lloyd about their upcoming assignment because she's horrible at explaining things clearly. Dagas tells Lloyd that their objective is to take out monsters that keep ruining nearby farmland, and Silica adds that different kinds of monsters have strangely grouped together into one big swarm. Lloyd is hearing something like this for the very first time, and Dagas acknowledges that it's unprecedented even for them, but insists that they should prepare accordingly. Out of nowhere, Cross comments that since they're facing so many opponents at once, he and Yui will have a rough time because fighters who specialize in melee combat aren't suited for large mobs. Ying nods in agreement, saying they'll have to rely heavily on Silica this round, since she can cast spells that hit multiple targets. But even Silica's worried because spells that cover large areas tend to drain mana rapidly. Yu then turns to Lloyd and asks if he knows any offensive magic, and he responds that he can perform beginner-level spells, though their effects aren't all that unique. Dagas then shifts focus to discussing their battle plan, saying Heed and Yua will lure the creatures into one spot so Silica can blast them simultaneously. Cross will defend Silica and Lloyd, whose main roles will be healing and support. Once they're done, everyone returns to the inn for some rest, but Lloyd starts heading off in a different direction. Dagas quickly stops him, asking where he's wandering off to, and Lloyd awkwardly explains that he's too poor to afford a room at the inn. Without hesitating, Dagas tosses him a pouch that contains more money than Lloyd has probably seen in his whole life combined. Lloyd gets extremely embarrassed, protesting that he absolutely can't accept it, but Dagas calmly insists it's not charity since he's planning to deduct that amount from his pay anyway. Lloyd can't say no now, so he gratefully accepts, promising Dagas he'll do everything possible to earn back every coin. The following day, everyone assembles outside the inn, and Yui is the last to show up. She glances around and asks why no one has their bags, and they're quick to explain that Lloyd stored all their luggage in his magical inventory, meaning they don't have to carry anything. You immediately jump at the opportunity as well, and Lloyd swiftly stores your belongings alongside the rest. You and Silica start showering him with praise for such an incredible skill, but Lloyd humbly tells you he'd be happy to teach everyone how it's done. They're all stunned since none of them have ever seen anyone besides Lloyd use this kind of magic, but he assures them it's actually quite simple to learn, though expanding the storage space takes real effort and practice. After that, they set out on their quest, and along the way, Lloyd quickly realizes just how important it is to keep the mood light during these long adventures. They reach their planned camping spot much earlier than expected. Once there, Lloyd retrieves everything from his inventory, allowing the group to quickly pitch their tents. Now that camp is set up, you decide to jump into the nearby river and mess around for a bit, but Dagas immediately reprimands you, reminding everyone that they still need to gather firewood and food first. Lloyd happily volunteers to handle the firewood, and Yui excitedly thanks him for making their lives easier. She then grabs Silica and pulls her toward the river for a quick bath, while Lloyd heads into the woods to look for dried branches. While collecting wood, Lloyd notices some berries he used to love eating as a kid and decides to gather a few for the others. Just as he reaches for them, he suddenly hears you yelling in panic. He immediately rushes toward the sound and discovers a massive snake-like beast ambushing the uncovered Yu and Silica, who are completely defenseless against it. Without hesitation, Lloyd leaps into action, striking the creature to draw its attention. Taking advantage of the opening, Yu and Silica sprint toward the riverbank. Lloyd waits just long enough for them to wrap themselves in towels before tossing them their weapons. He quickly casts 2 enhancement spells on them, and Yui charges forward at once, cutting the beast cleanly in half with a single powerful swing. Surprisingly, the monster's severed head still twitches with life, prompting Silica to shout for Yu and Lloyd to get back. She launches a fireball straight at it, obliterating it in one blast. Silica stares in shock at her own power. Her magic usually isn't that destructive, completely unaware that Lloyd's buffs boosted her strength. Afterward, you thank Lloyd sincerely for saving you, and casually ask him to store your sword again. But out of nowhere, your towel slips, giving Lloyd an accidental glimpse of what you'd rather keep hidden. Both of you immediately panic, and despite it clearly not being his fault, Lloyd ends up getting slapped across the face. Once they return to camp and settle down, Lloyd decides to teach the group how to use the magical storage skill. He instructs everyone to imagine opening a small space between their palms, but no one has any idea what he's talking about. With Silica's encouragement, they try anyway, only to end up awkwardly mimicking Naruto-style hand motions like they're doing some kind of training exercise. Lloyd grows visibly embarrassed and starts worrying he's a terrible teacher since no one seems to be getting it. When suddenly, Silica whispers, "storage," and instantly manages to create a magical space. At that moment, everyone finally understands that unlike Lloyd, they can't perform spells silently, but as long as they say an incantation, they might figure it out eventually. That night, while the others are asleep, Lloyd and Yui take the first watch shift together. Yui quietly moves over and sits next to Lloyd, telling him how grateful she is that he joined their team. Lloyd honestly responds that since he didn't have a job anyway, he's the one who should be thanking her. Then, recalling how fiercely determined Yui seemed about completing this specific mission for their client, he asks if there's a particular reason she's so passionate about finishing the quest. Yui explains that when she was young, her hometown was attacked by creatures, and she ended up as the only one left alive. So when she heard about this particular quest, she immediately jumped at the chance because she wanted to protect others from going through what she experienced. Suddenly, Lloyd interrupts her, quietly telling her to stop talking because he senses monsters nearby. Yui instantly switches to alert mode, grabbing her weapon, while Lloyd urges her to quickly wake the others. The entire group soon prepares to confront a swarm of spider monsters. But seeing how many there are, they realize retreating would be smarter right now. and the snapping noise alerts the creatures. Everyone immediately sprints away, but the spiders swiftly catch up, cutting off their escape. The spiders begin shooting webs from their abdomens, and the party manages to block the first wave of attacks. But one of the spiders successfully wraps up Silica's staff and snatches it away from her. Soon, the spiders trap the whole team inside a silk cage, causing panic to set in. Lloyd says they need to move immediately before the spiders press the attack. He rapidly casts buffs on each teammate, then tells Yui to start. She jumps into action, slicing through the web cage, allowing Cross to retrieve Silica's staff. At the same moment, Yui charges at a spider, deflecting its sticky spray and swiftly slicing off its legs. Then she skillfully surfs along another spider's web stream to close the gap toward a second spider, cleanly severing its legs as well. Lloyd then signals Silica and Cross to jump into the battle. Silica creates several flaming orbs, and Cross fires his arrows through them, igniting the spiders with flaming projectiles. With the fight concluded, Lloyd realizes he's just been giving out orders, despite being the newest person on the team. He quickly apologizes for stepping over the line, but Dagus reassures him that he actually did a great job and shows natural leadership skills. The rest of the team agrees wholeheartedly, encouraging Lloyd to keep taking an active role in guiding them during fights. By the next morning, everyone has gotten pretty good at using the magic storage skill, managing to carry their luggage easily. And as they continue on their quest, Lloyd can't help but wonder about the real reason the spiders showed up here. A few days later, while Lloyd is handling night watch alone, his thoughts keep circling back to the spider monsters they fought earlier. The more he thinks about it, the more he feels they should have investigated them in greater detail. Before he can spiral too far into those worries, Yu and Silica quietly approach from behind and ask if he's planning to take another solo shift tonight. Lloyd gives a small nod in response, and the two of you exchange uneasy looks. He's been doing this night after night without rest. You suggest rotating watch duties with someone else, but Lloyd brushes it off, insisting he's fine. He explains that he'd rather everyone else stay rested in case something dangerous happens. Yui starts to open her mouth, clearly ready to scold him, but Silica gently cuts in, asking her to respect Lloyd's decision for now. Still, Silica softly reminds Lloyd to say something if the pressure ever becomes too much. From inside their tent, Cross and Dagus silently observe the exchange, both unsettled by how determined Lloyd is to shoulder everything on his own. The next morning, the group resumes their journey. During a short break, Lloyd discreetly activates a detection spell to scan the surrounding area for monsters. When he senses nothing nearby, he lets out a quiet sigh of relief, only for Yui to suddenly rush over and demand to know what he's doing. Lloyd explains that it's a scouting spell that allows him to detect monsters and other potential threats nearby. Yui looks genuinely surprised, admitting she's never even heard of magic like that before. Lloyd downplays it, saying the range isn't anything special, but it's still useful as an early warning. Yui, however, grows more concerned, realizing that Lloyd is still taking full responsibility for protecting the camp. Once again, he reassures her that he's fine and doesn't need help. That night, Lloyd returns to watching alone. Nearby, Yui mutters that it feels like Lloyd doesn't trust them at all, even though they're supposed to be friends now. Silica gently reminds her that everyone opens up at their own pace. She suspects Lloyd might have some past trauma that makes it hard for him to rely on others, and that he may not realize just how capable he truly is, causing him to push himself far too hard. You find yourself curious about Lloyd's past, but Silica softly reassures you that he'll share it when he's ready. Later, Dagus quietly approaches Lloyd and asks for his help with something. Cross offers to take over watch duty for the time being, and Lloyd reluctantly agrees. Following Dagus to the edge of camp, Lloyd watches as he expertly sets up a tripwire alarm designed to alert them if monsters get too close. Lloyd is honestly impressed, and Dagus smiles, telling him the alarm will handle scouting so Lloyd can finally get some sleep. Lloyd immediately waves it off, insisting there's no need, and claiming he can do a better job himself. Dagus suddenly turns serious and asks him point blank whether he actually trusts the party. Lloyd hesitates before saying that he does, but Dagus firmly points out that his actions say otherwise. Memories flood Lloyd's mind. Merlin, his former team leader, and all the times he was called inexperienced or useless. Quietly, he admits that if he doesn't push himself hard enough, he might end up being a burden to everyone else. Dagus catches him completely off guard by replying calmly, telling him to go ahead and cause trouble. Lloyd stares at him in confusion, and Dagus patiently explains that the entire reason they formed a party was to face challenges together. Things no one person could handle alone. Everyone makes mistakes. That's why teammates exist. With a steady, unwavering tone, Dagus urges Lloyd to start trusting and depending on the people fighting alongside him. For Lloyd, hearing those words is a completely new experience, the kind of reassurance he's never really had before. The thought itself feels strangely warm and comforting to him. Eventually, Dagus manages to convince him to lie down and get some proper rest. Later that night, as he sits quietly inside the tent, Lloyd catches himself smiling without even realizing it, the idea slowly sinking in that he finally has people around him he can depend on. The next morning, he awkwardly decides to try acting on that realization. Nervous and unsure of himself, he shyly approaches Yu and hesitantly asks if she would be willing to help him go fetch some water. Yu immediately agrees without a second thought, clearly delighted that Lloyd is finally reaching out and asking for help on his own. Meanwhile, far away at a secluded mansion, a nobleman named Michelle listens as a cloaked black mage delivers a quiet report. The mage explains that he has successfully placed the magic stones exactly where Michelle instructed him to. A satisfied smirk spreads across Michelle's face as he hears the news, convinced that everything is now perfectly in place and their plan should proceed without any problems. The mage goes on to mention that their earlier schemes have already scattered most of the high-ranking adventurer parties, ensuring there will be very few people capable of interfering. Still, he cautiously points out that the hero's party remains active and could potentially cause trouble. Michelle simply shrugs it off, commenting that the hero's group usually only acts when they receive direct orders from the king. Even if they do get involved, he confidently believes that the hero alone won't be able to stop what's about to happen. Back in the forest, Lloyd and the others begin to feel uneasy as they move through the area. Something feels off. The place is far too quiet, and there isn't a single monster in sight. Sensing something is wrong, Lloyd decides to extend the range of his search spell. Moments later, he quickly picks up a massive concentration of monsters roughly 10 kilometers ahead. Cross points out that if they're that close, they must already be dangerously near the farms they were assigned to protect. Before Lloyd can say anything more, Yu cuts in, staring at him in disbelief as she asks if he's seriously capable of detecting monsters from 10 kilometers away, which makes Yu completely lose her composure. Just the other day, Lloyd had told her his detection range was limited. Lloyd quickly tries to defend himself, insisting that 10 kilometers really isn't all that far. That only makes Yu more frustrated, nearly shouting at him in disbelief. The rest of the group quickly steps in to calm her down, reminding her that they need to focus on the situation at hand. Without wasting another second, they break into a run toward the source of the monsters. But by the time they arrive, they're already too late. The creatures have begun invading the farmlands they were supposed to defend. Everyone stops in their tracks, stunned by the sheer size of the enormous wolf pack gathered there. Lloyd, however, feels even more unsettled for another reason. This is the only place where he was able to sense monsters at all. He can't help but wonder where the rest of them have gone. The others share the same concern, knowing that monsters don't usually abandon their territories so suddenly. Something about the situation feels very wrong. As they stand there trying to make sense of it, Cross suddenly notices something strange at the very center of the wolf pack. The others can't see clearly from where they are, their eyesight nowhere near as sharp as his. Quickly reacting, Lloyd casts a spell to enhance his vision, allowing him to focus in on the area like a telescope. With his sight magnified, he immediately spots something unusual among the wolves, a strange black stone lying in their midst. Without hesitation, Lloyd shares the effects of the vision spell with the rest of the party so they can see it too. One by one, they begin to make out the object clearly. Dagis is the first to speak, noting that it looks very much like some kind of magic stone. Silica, on the other hand, nervously points out the unsettling black aura radiating from it. Lloyd studies it carefully and suggests that the dark aura could be mana leaking from the stone itself. As he focuses on it more, a realization slowly dawns on him. The mana coming from the stone feels incredibly similar to the kind used by the beast folk. Suddenly, he remembers something Merlin once told him, that beast folk possess a special kind of magic capable of controlling monsters. And judging by what he's seeing now, the stone at the center of the pack seems to be doing exactly that. Without hesitating for even a moment, Lloyd immediately casts his search spell once more. This time, the magic reveals another massive surge of monsters rapidly advancing toward their location. At that instant, he finally realizes that the mysterious magic stone must be the source of the entire disaster unfolding around them. Although the exact reason behind the attack is still a mystery, the tension among the party rises quickly, and several members begin to panic, thinking that retreating might be their only chance to survive. However, she strongly objects, passionately insisting that if they abandon the area now, the monsters will destroy the crops, and the villagers will lose everything they depend on. Dagas, after a moment of hesitation, agrees with her point. Silica, on the other hand, openly questions whether they even stand a chance against such an overwhelming number of enemies. Just then, Lloyd steps forward with steady confidence, declaring that they should stand their ground and fight. He assures them that victory is possible. With a firm tone, he explains that their first and most important objective must be to destroy the magic stone. Turning to Cross, he urgently asks if he can hit the stone with an arrow from where they are. Cross hesitates, unsure if he can actually break something at that distance, but Lloyd quickly reassures him that a solid hit will be enough. Taking a deep breath, Cross carefully lines up his shot, while Lloyd swiftly casts 3 powerful enchantments at the same time, strengthening both Cross and his equipment. Empowered by the sudden surge of magic, Cross releases his arrow, and it flies straight and true, shattering the magic stone into fragments. Stunned, Cross asks Lloyd how he managed to pull that off so effortlessly. Lloyd casually replies that he simply enchanted Cross, the bow, and the arrow simultaneously, as if it were nothing unusual. The rest of the group, however, can only stare in disbelief, fully aware that a typical white mage would never be capable of casting multiple enchantments on separate targets all at once like that. At that very moment, they notice the wolves nearby suddenly turning on each other, now that the stone is gone. Lloyd watches this unfold with quiet relief, noting that the first phase of his plan has worked exactly as intended. Still, He grimly reminds himself that the enormous horde he sensed earlier is still charging toward them. Moments later, the monsters burst from the forest, rushing straight in their direction. Without hesitation, Silica steps forward, placing herself between the party and the oncoming wave. The creatures close the distance quickly, drawing dangerously near, but Lloyd stays calm, waiting until the perfect moment. Just before impact, he signals Silica. In an instant, she unleashes a raging tornado of fire, a swirling inferno that engulfs and incinerates every monster caught in its path. The group is left speechless, none of them having ever seen her wield such destructive power before. Lloyd immediately tells Silica to keep the pressure on, instructing her to alternate between wind and fire spells to continue overwhelming the enemy. Then, he quickly turns his focus back to Cross. Silica's flames have created thick clouds of smoke that now blanket the battlefield, blinding the flying monsters above, but also hiding them from sight. Acting quickly, Lloyd forms a telepathic link with Cross, syncing their senses. Using his enhanced search ability, he relays the precise location of each airborne creature directly into Cross's mind. Guided by Lloyd's directions, Cross fires again and again, each arrow finding its mark without fail, bringing down every flying threat one by one. With that task handled, Lloyd rushes back to Silica, ready to begin the final stage of his plan. But when he reaches her, she admits anxiously that her mana is completely drained. Remaining calm, Lloyd immediately turns himself into a living conduit, pouring his own mana into her to restore her strength. The sudden transfer takes a heavy toll on him, and he collapses from exhaustion, having given far more energy than his body can safely handle. Even so, he manages to smile weakly and reassures Silica not to worry about him, urging her to cast one last spell, Rain. Following his guidance, Silica gathers the mana he shared and casts the spell. Heavy rain begins pouring down, soaking the burning forest and quickly putting out the flames before they can spread any further. But the effort drains every last bit of strength she has left, and she collapses as well. Dagas moves quickly and catches her before she can hit the ground. She praises Silica for her bravery and determination, promising that she and Dagas will take care of any remaining monsters still wandering nearby. As the two of them rush off to clean up the stragglers, Lloyd and Silica finally allow themselves a brief moment to rest. But not long after, Lloyd sinks back to the ground again, his body still trembling from the strain. Frustrated with himself, he mutters under his breath, irritated by how drained he feels, and he quietly resolves that he needs to push himself even harder from now on. A short while later, you and the others successfully eliminate the remaining threats. Yet, as they regroup around Lloyd, he urgently insists they can't rest yet. He feels a dreadful premonition in his gut and warns the party they must immediately hurry to the nearby city. Lloyd's instincts scream at him that the real target all along has been the city of Ishtar, and this attack was merely a diversion. Everyone looks completely lost, and Lloyd casually whips out a crate full of mana potions from his storage dimension. He quickly downs one while explaining that this entire mission was just a setup to lure high-ranking adventurers away from Ishtar, making the city easier to invade. Cross scoffs at this idea, pointing out that Ishtar still has the Heroes Party and the entire Night Order, so the defenses aren't exactly easy pickings. But Dagas admits Lloyd's theory does actually check out, so you decide it's better to be safe than sorry and announce they'll head back immediately. Lloyd then finishes gulping down his potion, casually buffs the whole party, and tells you they need to get going immediately. Without another word, he sprints off toward the city, leaving everyone dumbfounded at how ridiculously fast he's moving. As he rushes to catch up, she realizes she's suddenly faster than freaking Ishao speed. The rest of the group follows quickly behind, hardly surprised when Lloyd calmly mentions he boosted their speed specifically to help them make it back as fast as possible. While Lloyd's squad races back, the Count is sitting comfortably at his desk. General Gullus walks in, asking how the preparations are coming along, and the Count smugly reveals that everything is nearly set for the attack. He credits their success entirely to the girl Gullus kidnapped. Apparently, she's proven incredibly useful. The Count chillingly remarks that he still has many twisted experiments planned for her, and he'll have all the time in the world once Ishtar falls. Gullus can't shake the feeling that the Count's plotting something seriously messed up, but decides not to question it too deeply. After all, the Count was the Demon Lord's trusted right-hand man, and his skills definitely aren't to be underestimated. At the same time, the girl is trapped in the Count's jail, and every now and then he brings her magic potions to forcefully drain her magic and produce those beast-attracting magic crystals he's been using. It's happened so often that by now, she's completely lost the will to resist. Back with Lloyd's crew, they've just crossed a massive grassy field and are on track to reach the city in record time. But Silica grows visibly worried about Lloyd's condition. Convinced it must be insanely exhausting to maintain speed enhancement magic for this long, Lloyd just brushes it off, clueless about her concern, explaining that once you master it, you can drastically reduce the mana drain from enhancement spells. Menius hardly even affected him anymore. The others immediately ask Lloyd what he means by getting used to it. So he casually explains that when he was younger, Merlin straight up dumped him in the middle of the freaking forest and abandoned him there until he could find his way home by himself. Of course, as a white mage, Lloyd wasn't exactly capable of defeating monsters head-on. All he could really do was constantly cast support magic on himself while running for his life, desperately trying to survive. Over time, he ended up experimenting with every type of magic he could manage, pushing himself to the limit until he eventually found his way back home, alive. The others stare at him in complete disbelief, genuinely disturbed by what he had to endure. But Lloyd just shrugs it off like it's nothing, honestly believing that kind of brutal training is perfectly normal and not particularly impressive. You and Silica exchange an awkward glance, both realizing that someone probably needs to tell him that responsible adults don't usually dump children into monster-filled forests and call it training. Even after they try to gently explain that to him, Lloyd somehow walks away with the opposite conclusion. thinking that normal kids must go through even harsher experiences, which only convinces him further that his own abilities are embarrassingly lacking. Once everyone has caught their breath, Lloyd reapplies his speed enhancement magic and they resume their sprint toward the city. Suddenly, Lloyd stops dead in the middle of running, which causes everyone behind him to slam into one another in a chaotic pileup. Annoyed, they immediately demand to know why he stopped so suddenly. Lloyd explains that his scan picked up something strange ahead, though he can't quite identify what it is yet. Silica quickly asks if it's another monster, but Lloyd shakes his head, saying it feels more like a hunter stalking its prey. Still, he admits he can't be completely certain unless he gets a closer look, so he suggests that the others continue on toward the city while he checks it out himself. Yua immediately objects, pointing out that Lloyd has no idea what he might run into, and if things turn dangerous, there's no way he should face it alone. Lloyd reluctantly admits she has a point, and the rest of the group jumps in as well, reminding him that they're a team and should deal with danger together. Lloyd is genuinely moved by their concern, clearly touched that they care about his safety. He then leads everyone toward the source of the strange presence, and once they get closer, he confirms without a doubt that there are demons inside the building ahead. Hearing him casually mention demons, Yuba nervously asks if he's absolutely sure, since demons usually remain in the demon territory and aren't supposed to set foot in the 3 major nations on this continent. For ages, they've tried and failed to invade this land, so their sudden appearance here is deeply unsettling. Everyone looks at Lloyd like he just said something painfully obvious, because everything Yuba mentioned is basic common knowledge. Lloyd, meanwhile, looks as clueless as a newborn. Awkwardly, he admits that he doesn't really remember his childhood at all. The earliest memory he has is from the day Merlin took him in, and by then the war had already ended. Lloyd agrees that they need to report it, but he still wants to gather a bit more information first. The others immediately warn him that getting any closer would be extremely dangerous. Lloyd understands that completely. However, the mana he senses coming from the house is nearly identical to the energy from the magic crystal that attracted the monster horde earlier. That means these demons are almost certainly connected to whoever is planning as plaque an attack on the city. Because of that, Lloyd believes the risk of gathering more intel is worth it, and you strongly support his decision. She passionately reminds everyone that as adventurers, protecting people is literally their job. Right now, these demons clearly pose a serious threat, and if they're lucky, stopping them here might prevent the attack on Ishtar entirely. It's a gamble, but one worth taking. When they cautiously approach the house and peek through the window, they're shocked to find it completely empty. Confused, Lloyd quickly performs another scan to pinpoint the exact location, only to discover that the demons are actually hiding underground. From what he can sense, they're definitely in the middle of some kind of ritual. Lloyd quickly asks Silica if she can use earth magic, since it's the only way they'll be able to get underground fast enough. Silica confidently tells him she's got it handled, so Lloyd immediately buffs the entire party once again. Without wasting time, Silica casts her sand pit spell, creating a massive hole beneath their feet. Seconds later, they drop straight down and land right in the middle of the demon's ritual. Yua calmly steps forward and presses her sword to one demon's face, threatening to kill him unless he explains exactly what they're planning. But before he can say a word, another demon suddenly attacks, launching rocks with earth magic at Yua. She's forced to shift her focus just long enough for the first demon to break free and make a run for it. As he rushes past his ally, Cross fires without hesitation, putting a bullet straight through another demon's chest. The one who escaped bolts toward the doorway without looking back, shamelessly abandoning the others. He slams the door shut behind him, hoping it will stop you from chasing after him. Then the remaining demon's mains make a foolish attempt to sneak up on you while she's focused on the locked door. Cross reacts instantly, stepping in without effort and firing clean shots into both of their thighs, dropping them and leaving them completely vulnerable for you to finish off. With those threats taken care of, the group quickly regathers and moves to chase down the demon who escaped. On the other side of the door, the fleeing demon is frantically wrapping the kidnapped girl inside a cocoon of magic, hoping to secretly transport her away before anyone can stop him. But only seconds later, you and the others burst through the door. Startled, he immediately panics and bolts upstairs. The party gives chase, and as it becomes clear he's starting to gain distance, Lloyd calls out for you to sprint ahead and block his escape. He directs Silica and Degas to move in from both sides, trapping the demon with nowhere to run. Lloyd bluntly tells him to surrender, making it clear he has questions and fully expects answers. But the demon refuses, unleashing one last desperate lightning spell in a final attempt to take them all down. Lloyd anticipates it perfectly, instantly raising magical shields around the group. The attack is deflected and the lightning rebounds, shooting straight through the demon's chest and killing him on the spot. With the danger gone, Lloyd quickly grabs the cocoon and carefully unwraps it, surprised to find a beast girl trapped inside. For now, they carry her gently back into the cabin and lay her on a bed so she can rest. With all the demons dead, they no longer have anyone left to question, leaving the girl as their only possible source of answers. But in her current condition, she doesn't look like she'll be waking up anytime soon. Dagas anxiously asks Lloyd if he can heal her. Lloyd calmly says he'll do what he can and raises his staff over her, beginning a healing spell. Silica watches in amazement as Lloyd's magic works with incredible efficiency. Not long after, the girl begins to stir. The moment her eyes open, Ui eagerly starts firing off questions, clearly desperate for answers. The poor girl struggles to keep up under the sudden interrogation, but manages to at least share her name, Claire, which is a start. Lloyd gently steps in, taking over the questioning in a calmer way. He asks Claire if she knows why the demons imprisoned her. She stays quiet at first, so Lloyd changes his approach. He softly explains that they're adventurers who were protecting a nearby farm that had been under repeated monster attacks. He tells her about the powerful magic crystal he found there, one that gave off clear beast magic and drew the monsters in. Lloyd recalls hearing that certain beast folk have the ability to control monsters through their magic. Carefully, he asks if the magic behind the attacks came from her. Claire hesitates for a moment before finally admitting that the magic stones are powered by her ability, but the demons have been forcing her to create them. With that revelation, Lloyd and the others quickly piece things together. The demons must be planning to use the monsters as an invading force to attack Ishtar, the gateway city of the continent. Realizing the danger, they agree they need to head back immediately to help protect it, and they decide to bring Claire along with them. Meanwhile, near the city, some guards have just discovered another magic stone planted by the demons. Unfortunately, it's already too late. Monsters have begun pouring toward Ishtar, and if things continue like this, the entire city could soon be overwhelmed. Back with Lloyd's group, they stop briefly to catch their breath when Lloyd suddenly senses a massive wave of monsters heading straight for the city, with an even larger army close behind. Realizing there's no way they can handle that many enemies on their own, Lloyd makes a difficult decision. He tells you and the others to rush ahead, warn the knights, and help defend the city, while he stays behind with Claire, planning to use her power to stop the monsters before they can advance any further. At the same time, back in the city, Alan's patience is wearing thinner and thinner as he keeps trying to find someone capable of filling Lloyd's spot. One white mage after another steps forward, yet none of them can even maintain 2 proper spells before losing steam, while Lloyd used to cast 5 in a row like it was nothing. Rena quietly suggests that maybe Lloyd was simply an outlier, someone unusually gifted. Pride won't let him accept that. Instead, he convinces himself the problem lies with the entire talent pool. In his mind, every white mage in the city is even more useless than Lloyd ever was, so he decides they will keep cycling through recruits until someone worthwhile finally appears. Right then, a member of the Imperial Guard bursts in, carrying grim news. Scouts have reported a massive army of monsters gathering beyond the walls, over 10,000 strong, and the king has requested the hero party's aid in defending the city. Alan, still convinced his group is the strongest force alive, accepts the request instantly, without even stopping to think it through. The guard lets out a breath of relief, assuming Alan must have some solid strategy ready if he can answer so confidently. But as soon as the guard leaves, Sheena asks if he's really sure about this, since 10,000 monsters is not something anyone should take lightly. Alan brushes off the concern, more focused on the prestige that comes with answering a royal summons. He's already imagining the praise, the glory, and the bragging rights, certain this moment will prove he's the strongest person in the entire kingdom. Listening to him chase fame like that, the rest of the party quietly exchange uneasy looks, because they can already tell this is not going to end well. Out in the forest, Lloyd and Claire have already located a second wave of monsters gathering beneath the trees. If this group manages to link up with the horde marching toward Ishtar, the city won't survive the impact. Lloyd says they need to find a way to stop the swarm before it joins the main force, but Claire hesitates. She asks if there's any way to halt their advance without killing them. Even though demons were behind the summoning, it was still her power that brought the creatures here, and she can't shake the guilt. Lloyd can see how much this weighs on her and promises to come up with a plan that protects the town while minimizing harm to the monsters. To make it work, though, he'll need her help. He asks if she can use her magic to guide the creatures back to their natural habitats across the region. She begins casting a spell to communicate with the monsters, opening the channel, but before the magic can settle in, something in the woods interferes and cuts through the connection. Until they find whatever is disrupting her spell, she won't be able to push it any further. Back at the guild, Alan calls together every adventurer still in the city. The moment he sees the room, he sneers. All the A-rank and higher teams have already been sent out on missions, so what's left are B-rank groups and below. It's not ideal, but he tells Alan to stop looking down on the people who actually showed up. Alan keeps treating the B-rank adventurers like expendable pawns, and the tension in the room starts rising fast. Before it can boil over into a fight, the branch manager storms in and orders everyone to calm down. They're here to fight monsters, not each other, and there's no time to waste on ego. Alan agrees to drop the insults and moves on to strategy. He declares that all mages should open the battle by launching their strongest spells and taking down 10 monsters each in the first volley. While they recover their mana, Alan and the fighters will charge forward to hold the line, then they'll repeat the cycle until the battlefield is cleared. On paper, it sounds decent, but the adventurers immediately push back. They don't have that kind of firepower. At best, their strongest spells might take out 1 monster each. Expecting 10 per person is pure fantasy. Alan starts calling everyone incompetent, but Claire cuts in and admits she couldn't meet that target either. When Alan demands to know why, she explains that her spell strength suddenly dropped a while ago, and ever since then, her magic has been far less efficient. It's not just her. Daggaz, Silica, and Yui have all felt the same drop, and every one of those problems began the day after Lloyd left the group. Alan snaps, accusing everyone of faking their abilities, but Rena fires back that no one ever lied to him. In fact, if Alan had bothered to keep up with his training even a little, he'd have noticed he's gotten weaker too, but he's been too busy basking in the spotlight of being called a hero. Rena says it plainly so everyone can hear. Alan doesn't deserve the title. With a room full of low-rank adventurers watching, Alan's face burns with humiliation. He tries to prove himself by throwing a full power punch at Dagus, but Dagus stops it effortlessly with one hand. The entire guild witnesses it. After spending half an hour calling everyone else helpless, Alan's image is completely shattered. Red-faced, he storms out of the hall while the adventurers whisper among themselves about how someone like him was ever called a hero in the first place. They know now they can't rely on him to save the city, and the mood turns grim. The monsters won't wait forever, and some start wondering if abandoning the city might be the only way to survive. But Rena steps forward before panic spreads. Lloyd is still deep in the forest with Claire. Together, they uncover a magic crystal hidden beneath the trees. It's the same type Lloyd has encountered before, and the foul energy pouring from it is almost certainly what's interfering with Claire's spell. Unless they destroy it, she won't be able to regain control over the monsters. Worse, there are probably dozens more scattered throughout the woods, and tracking them all down would be a nightmare. Lloyd agrees that searching the entire forest would take too long, so he asks Claire if she can sense the crystals since they're feeding off her power. She says she can detect them if she's close enough, but the forest is massive and her sensing range is limited, making it nearly impossible to locate them without getting dangerously near first. Lloyd says that won't be a problem because he already has the perfect solution. Before she can even ask what he means, he casts sensory sharing and enhancement on her, expanding her range until every crystal in the forest lights up in her mind. Then, he casts invisibility over both of them so they can move without being noticed. They slip through the forest and move past the horde, while Claire begins purging the dark enchantments, neutralizing the crystals one by one. Back at the city walls, the adventurers gather and prepare for battle. Worry hangs heavy in the air. Earlier, Rena explained that Lloyd was the real reason the hero party had been so successful. If he was that important, the others ask why he was kicked out. Rena admits it was because their egos got too big. The title of hero went to their heads, and they started believing every victory came from their own strength while ignoring the endless support Lloyd provided. Their only real chance now is to find Lloyd and ask for his help. But the guild manager tells them Lloyd isn't in the city. After being expelled, he joined an S-rank team and left on a monster hunting mission. With no better option, Dagus tells everyone they're placing their hopes on Lloyd returning in time. The adventurers trust his judgment and brace themselves to hold the line, even though the sight of the monster army outside the walls makes their stomachs knot with fear. Dagus's battle plan is simple. Archers will begin by unleashing a rain of arrows to thin the horde. When the monsters fall into the trenches, the shield line will lock together and hold them back while the mages fire everything they've got. It will be exhausting work with no breaks, but if they keep that rhythm, they might be able to hold out until Lloyd returns. Later that night, Yui, Cross, Silica, and the others close in on Ishtar. Lloyd's speed enchantment is still active, so after a quick rest, they can keep running without collapsing. At the same time, Lloyd and Claire locate the final crystal hidden deep in the forest. Once they destroy it, the monsters finally return to their natural behavior. Unfortunately, the area is packed with high wolves and blood panthers, two species that hate each other. The moment the mind control fades, they start tearing into one another. In the chaos, one beast crashes into Claire, knocking away the invisibility Lloyd cast on her. Instantly, a dozen feral eyes lock onto her position. She freezes, forgetting in her panic that she can command monsters, and she's seconds away from being torn apart. Lloyd quickly pulls their attention toward himself, drawing the pack away and saving her. Back at the city walls, the situation is getting worse. The defenders have managed to hold the horde back for hours, but exhaustion is taking its toll and gaps are forming in the line. Just when it feels like they can't last much longer, a massive fireball streaks across the battlefield. Yui, Cross, Silica, and the others finally arrive. Meanwhile, Lloyd continues weaving between claws and fangs in the forest, dodging every attack without striking back. Claire is amazed by how fast he moves, but doesn't understand why he isn't fighting. Then she remembers his promise to avoid killing monsters for her sake. Determined not to let him suffer because of her, she gathers her strength and begins to sing. One by one, the beasts calm down, their anger fading as they retreat into the forest like nothing happened. Lloyd mutters that he could have used that a few minutes earlier, but he's still impressed. She explains she simply asked them to return home, and they listened. With the path clear, Lloyd tells her they need to hurry back to Ishtar before the next wave arrives. With the nearby horde freed from the mind control and the path briefly clear, Lloyd tells her they need to move, and they push hard to get back to Ishtar before the next wave hits. Inside Ishtar, the battle is still brutal. Even with your party on the field, they have barely made a dent in the swarm. Weapons are running out, mana is scraping bottom, and it feels like this really is the end, like the kind of we might actually be cooked. Rena keeps calling for grit, telling everyone not to fold because there has to be a way to claw out a win. But the front line is already breached, and people are being wounded across the field. They hang on until morning, and by then, every layer of defense has been smashed. The guild manager whispers that this might be the city's last stand. Then, before the monsters can flood the streets, a clear voice rises from the cliff by the forest. It is Claire, her song boosted and carried far by Lloyd's magic. Soon, the combined effect halts the monsters in their tracks, and instead of pressing the attack, they begin calmly retreating back into the forest, lifting the immediate threat and saving the city from collapse. The shift is so sudden it feels unreal. When the last creature is gone, Claire lets the song fall away, and her knees nearly give out. But Lloyd catches her and holds her steady. They are both relieved that the city was spared, if only for now, because the disaster is not finished as they see a group of golems walking toward the walls of Ishtar. At the same time, calm Michel is relaxing in his fortress, utterly certain that by now the city of Ishtar has been stamped flat beneath the monsters. Then a courier bursts into his office with an urgent dispatch. Michel assumes the message will confirm Ishtar's fall. Yet to his dismay, he hears the horde abruptly broke off and scattered back into the woods. All but the golems, which for some reason could not hear Claire's song. His confidence drops so fast, it might as well have come with a live reaction tag. So Lloyd figures demons are meddling somehow. And with the golems poised to wreak havoc, he throws a speed boost on Claire and tells her they have to sprint for town at once. As they weave past the lumbering golems, the pair are spotted, so Lloyd orders Claire to pull back to slip the incoming stone fist. With the city's trench looming, he slips an arm around Claire's waist and vaults clean over in a single breath. The soldiers on the ramparts gape, since a leap that far while carrying someone is not remotely normal. Then again, they have heard the stories about Lloyd's ridiculous enhancement magic. Once across, Lloyd and Claire regroup with you and the others, and they all thank him for keeping Ishtar standing. He says the credit belongs to Claire since her magic drove most of the creatures off. But the golems are still marching this way, so everyone needs to prepare. Right then, his knees buckle and he collapses from sheer exhaustion because he's been using enhancement magic almost non-stop for days, and even for him, it's too much. The others urge him to rest because he is overdoing it. But he says he cannot stop until the city is secure. Classic. Moments later, the guildmaster arrives, and since he is here, Lloyd asks him to look after Claire for now, because her safety matters to him. The guildmaster nods, assigns a squad of knights to guard her, and swears to Lloyd she will be secure. With that settled, he is overjoyed that Lloyd returned in time, because right now, Lloyd is the city's only hope. Lloyd freezes at the news for a moment, since he had been certain the hero party was still in town. Rena arrives in a hurry and informs him that Alan flat out refused to take part in the battle. Lloyd is incredulous, asking what sort of hero abandons his duty when lives hang in the balance. And Rena answers that someone like Alan never deserved the title in the first place. Hero in name only, apparently. Right then, he spots a nasty gash along Rena's arm, and without a second thought channels healing magic to seal it shut. The guild master marvels at how quickly Rena mends under Lloyd's spell, though Lloyd sways on his feet afterward, utterly drained because his mana is already running on 1% battery mode. Rena says he did not need to strain himself just to patch her up, and he replies he could not leave her with a wound like that. She has also been wanting to apologize for failing to value everything he did for her, since he is the reason the hero party became strong in the first place. Lloyd tries to wave it off, saying he is not that strong, but Rena insists his support was indispensable. No one ever gave him credit, and she was complicit for not stopping Alan from tossing him out, so she offers a formal apology. At that moment, the alarm bells clang as the golems reach the walls. A few tumble into the trench, but many remain upright, and the guards surge forward to cut them down at once. Lloyd shouts for them to hold back because these golems are not ordinary, but the warning comes too late. A guard's blade explodes on contact with stone, and while he stares in shock, the golem hammers him to the ground with a heavy punch. Serena raises her shield and orders a full assault. The situation turns ugly fast, yet every spell and every arrow glances off the golem's rugged shell, forcing them to fall back as nerves begin to fray across the line. If they do not act fast, the city will fall regardless. So Lloyd tells you he will cast enhancement magic on everyone present. You ask if he can really manage that because empowering more than 100 fighters sounds absurd, borderline patch notes broken, and he answers that he can handle it. Even so, in his current condition, he can only apply the buffs one squad at a time, rather than all at once. Lloyd then starts launching the spells, and the instant he finishes, the strength drains from his legs because his mana is perilously low. He reports to the others that he has placed a strength buff on every fighter at the front and a mana buff on each of the mages. He also layered enhancements on the 4 of them as well, but they need to move right this second because he cannot promise the effects will hold long with him in this state. As the golems grind closer, Rena climbs a tower and calls across the field that Lloyd has reinforced everyone, so they should be able to engage the enemy now. The soldiers struggle to believe he buffed the whole force that fast, so they hesitate. But when one of them is about to be crushed, Rena charges in and absorbs the hit with her shield, and Yu drops from the tower and cleaves the golem clean in half. With that first one down, Rena lifts her shield and declares, "This proves Lloyd's enhancement magic works." Now that they have seen it, The troops recognize the surge in strength compared to a moment ago. Right then, Lloyd issues orders, sending Cross to assist the magic unit at the rear, while Dagas and Silica rush to the front lines. He himself is swaying on his feet, so a guard runs up, helps him stand, and guides him back to the fort to rest before he faceplants dramatically. Powered by his buffs, the adventurers tear through the golems one after another, and Lloyd cheers them on from a tower, looking like the most exhausted hype man alive. Just as they are about to finish the final construct, the enhancements wink out, and the fighters are once again unable to harm it. It may be only one golem, but if nothing stops it and it reaches the city, the havoc will be enormous. Yu then sprints into its path to block it, and just as the strike comes down, Rena shoves her aside so Dagas can take the punch. They cannot hold it like this for long, so Lloyd knows he has to act. His reserve is almost empty, but he scrapes together enough power to enhance Yu's blade. Yu catches on to what Lloyd just pulled off, so she asks Dagas and Rena to cover her for a heartbeat. The pair raise their shields while Yu readies her sword, and as they absorb the golem's punch, she sprints up its arm and shears its head clean off. It is clean, precise, and so smooth it would have gone triple viral if anyone had time to record it. With that decisive cut, the city of Ishtar is safe, and Lloyd finally exhales in relief because he can rest at last without the world actively ending for 5 whole minutes. Back at Michelle's castle, the general storms in after learning the beast girl they had seized for their scheme has escaped, and he demands answers. But Michelle had already realized the assault failed, knew the general would absolutely lose it, and quietly packed up and fled. The general rages, trashes the office, and then decides he will kill the one who meddled with his plans. Petty? Yes. Dangerous? Also very much yes. Back in town, Lloyd wakes in an inn, and a moment later, you arrive to check on him. You are relieved to see him awake since he was so drained that he slept for a full day straight, mana completely zeroed out. His first act is to apologize because he blames himself for not being strong enough. But Yu is tired of how little he values himself, so she tells him to come along because there is something he needs to see. She then leads him to the front entrance, and when she opens it, Lloyd finds a massive group waiting for him outside. The crowd is chanting his name. He panics and shuts the door immediately because he has never had such a large crowd chant his name before. Social battery instantly deleted. Anxiety speedrun unlocked. Yu explains they are here to express their gratitude to their savior and that it is disrespectful to shut a door in their faces, so he should go out and welcome them properly. But by the time she opens it again, Lloyd has already leaped out a window and is circling the block to avoid the crowd. Elsewhere at Merlin's home, Lily drops by to visit. Just as Willie reaches for the handle, a huge explosion erupts. Merlin steps out and Willie tells her that blasting the doorway is no way to welcome a guest, but she says she mistook him for an intruder. Willie does not mind since he was not hit, and Merlin is still impressed that he always manages to slip through her spells without a scratch. When Willie steps inside, he spots Thor and Lily, who fought alongside him and Merlin in their hero days, and it has been ages since the whole group gathered like this. Merlin then asks if he has any updates on Lloyd, so he explains that Lloyd was actually dropped from the hero party some time ago. Merlin reels at the news and cannot grasp why the party would cast Lloyd out, but Willie tells her not to worry since Lloyd is now with an S-rank team and doing fine. Merlin is relieved, yet Willie adds one more point, saying that although he has never spoken with Lloyd directly, he has watched him long enough to conclude that Merlin's parenting methods might have been so freaking bad. The room goes quiet in that he's not wrong but wow kind of way. Back in town, Lloyd stands on a rooftop as crowds pour through the streets looking for him. Right then, his friends spot him up there, and he asks why so many damn people are looking for him. They explain the crowd simply wants to thank him for saving the town, but Lloyd insists he does not deserve thanks, because to him, he only did the bare minimum. Yu tells him he is putting himself down again. He keeps setting impossible standards and beating himself up for no reason, like he is competing against a version of himself that does not even exist. So they all say he should have a bit more confidence, and for the first time, Lloyd actually seems to get their point. Back at Merlin's place, Willie says Lloyd is humble to a fault and has no real sense of his own strength, so it is a minor miracle that he found a team that would not exploit him. Merlin admits to herself she may have mishandled his training, though she only wanted to keep him from repeating her own damn mistakes. Growth is messy, and apparently so is parenting. Back in the city, Lloyd finally decides to face the crowd, and people immediately start pouring out thanks for the boost he gave them during the fight. To them, that makes Lloyd the new hero of Ishtar, while Alan and his crew are in serious trouble. Refusing to help without any reason in the middle of a crisis automatically revokes his hero title in the court of public opinion. No trial, no appeal. Just instant reputation collapse. His lofty status is gone, and of course his pride will not let him stay where Lloyd is hailed as the hero. So he tells everyone to pack up and leave at once, and the girls all trail after him with clear reluctance. The vibes are absolutely not immaculate. It is giving, we're leaving, but this is not a group decision. The next day, Lloyd and the rest receive a summons to the Lord's castle, and when they arrive, they are surprised to see Claire already waiting there. Yu asks if she was summoned too, but a few moments later the Lord appears and explains that Claire is actually an honored guest here. They take their seats, and Lord Abel informs them that Claire is the third princess of the Forest Empire, which means she is rather important. Lloyd and the others had no damn clue that Claire was royal, so the revelation hits like a surprise lore drop no one read the patch notes for. Setting that aside, Abel asks what they think of Claire's power now that they have seen it in action. Lloyd says it is incredible, but also frightening, since in the wrong hands it could unleash chaos, which is exactly why Abel says they cannot allow the demons to seize her again. The Empire will want to reclaim its princess soon, and they will not be subtle about it. So Abel gives Yu's party a special assignment. He wants them to escort Claire to the royal capital Sus. While that would normally fall to the royal knights, doing so would draw too much attention, and Abel does not want to risk alerting the demons to her presence. Low profile, no drama, at least in theory. It is obvious the demons covet Claire's power, and Lloyd is certain they will not give up easily. If anything, this is only the beginning. So he and the rest of the team agree to take her to the capital, and the next day they set out on their trip to Sulphus.